Brothers of the shining moon, heaven, earth, and sea, I call upon you in this hour, bring magic unto me. Brothers, oh, the cauldron cries, it singeth unto me songs of Mother Goddess and the Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and we are off adventuring into the spaces between. Hello, all. And we're being broadcast live on Truth Frequency Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. I hope everyone is having just a lovely evening, morning. And if you are in YouTube world, hello. Make sure you do hit that like and subscribe button because I need those likes. I need that positive affirmation that y'all like me. I hope y'all had a very good weekend and you didn't overdo it with the chocolate and all that stuff yesterday with National Singles Day. Actually, no, if you can't love yourself, who can you love? Seriously. So, yeah. Appreciate yourself, seriously. All right, so in chat, I see that in TFR we've got Lucky. Hey, Lucky, Ken, Big Rob, Hayes, Overbuilt, and Mystical. And then, man, TFR or YouTube is busy. We got Bomber, Marilena, Jessica, Elaine, Lewis, Titan. Who else is in here? MCAT. Be safe, MCAT, as you're driving around. And who else? If I miss you, I'm sorry. I'll say hello as I see you. I promise. And there we go. I can't just... I can't type and talk at the same time. But I think we all knew that. Anybody who's been here for a little bit knows that I am not very good at multitasking some days. But that's just the way of it. So, if you are a first-time listener, be sure to check out the... oh, goodness, seriously? Hold on. I seem to be having an audio issue. What's going on here? I don't know. I did hear me. People are hearing me. I don't know. So Overbuilt, if you can't hear me, refresh your screen. Sometimes that's what's necessary. But yeah, if you're a first-time listener and you want to check out the show and some of the older episodes, please do so. I've got a full library in both YouTube and Truth Frequency Radio. Yeah, you can also find me on Patreon, so that's www.patreon.com. So if you want to support the show, that's a good place to go. Or you can check out the Etsy shop. It's etsy.com/shop/Monarch Mountain Studio. That's MTN for Mountain. And, no matter how you are hearing me, make sure you do stop in and say hello. Hello. And I'm just totally stoked that you're wanting to stop in and listen in on my spiritual journey and my wanderings that I do. I'm drinking tea tonight. It's echinacea with elderberry, and I do have my Kleenex. For those of you who don't know, Minnie Paisley is a bit under the weather, so if you got a happy thought for her, please do so. I, as a mom, understand that it's my job to deal with vomit, but that's a bad word, and I don't like it. I would rather have spiders in my room, and that's actually saying something because I don't like spiders. So yeah, Nope. You can also send me an email at wildpaisley@gmail.com. That's WILDEPAISLEY@gmail.com. Call line is open tonight. It's 213-233-3998. Or if you're across the pond in the UK, it is 44203-393-2871. So thanks for joining me. And yeah, Minnie Paisley. So real quick, there's a question that came across the chat room that I wanted to answer really quick. Some Titan asked if I think the Fae are real, and yes, I do. I think there's a whole host of beings out there that we as humans consider supernatural, even though they are very natural. Yes, or feet. And but they're supernaturals and they are more than human. And yes, I do think they're out there. I think that as technology has increased, they've either adapted to hide extraordinarily well. I mean, isn't Bigfoot like the hide and go seek champion of the world ever, anywhere? Yeah. I mean, seriously. Nobody can find him. Well, some people can find him, but seriously. Bigfoot is yeah. Yeah, he's really good at hiding. So, anyways, I do think so. Actually, I'm going to be talking about elves today. Elves and fae are slightly different, and so we're going to get in there in just a moment. So tonight I wanted to talk about ancestor worship or ancestor veneration because they are both real things. And honestly, ancestor worship has been around pretty much ever since, well, we had ancestors. Um, I mean, they're there. And basically, the definition of ancestor worship is the custom of venerating deceased ancestors who are still considered a part of the family and whose spirits are believed to have the power to intervene in the affairs of the living. And so, what does that mean? Well, it means a couple different things actually. And I have all sorts of links and stuff to open up and check out, and I had most of them open, and then, yeah. So basically, the concept of ancestor worship is really not a new one for most pagans, really, truly. Because ancient cultures have been venerating those that become before them pretty much forever, like I mentioned, and they still do it. Think of the Day of the Dead, for instance. The way we celebrate the Day of the Dead. It's a celebration of those that have passed. It's a way of honoring those that have passed. And that's just one way to worship, or one way they've been um, venerated in some way, shape, or form. Oh, click out of there. I love technology. It's my friend most days. Seriously. What is going on here? No, that's what's going on. So yeah, I'm just going to open the link. There we go. I save all these things so I can get going, but yeah. The reason why ancestor worship, and honestly, it's really not ancestor worship so much it is ancestor veneration, because it's not really you're putting them in the place of a deity or worshiping them. It's more of you're venerating them. You're honoring them. That's the word I'm looking for. And because in a way they've paved not in a way, really truly, most of our ancestors have paved the way for us to get to this point. If it wasn't for the sacrifices, their advances, their education, their drive to succeed and reproduce, we wouldn't be here today. So yeah, it's a good thing to honor our ancestors, which is why so many cemeteries have big memorial stones or tombstones. There's rituals, oh my gosh, about the dead and passing, and the ritual to take care of the dead or bury the dead. And often it's to help them into the next life or the afterlife. And or just to let them pass, let them know that what they were working on here um, is going to be the next thing. And it's done, and they can move on, and we're here to pick up the mantle, if you will, and move forward with whatever it was that they were doing. And that's why, not as much today perhaps, but in years past, businesses were handed down from father to son or mother to daughter, or I should say parent to child. Um, the often, you were apprenticed to your father or another person in the family to learn a trade, and those are skills and things that you built up over a lifetime, and you taught them to your children, and then from there they were going to teach their children. So yeah, I'll drink more tea, Marilena. Haha. um it's I don't know what's wrong with my camera, guys. Anyways, it's just what that we do. We honor our ancestors. And so in ancient Europe, during the Neolithic period, if you will, it's when farming was really taking over the continent, and we were moving from the hunter-gatherer stage to more of the farmer phase. And a lot of the tombs and the burial places were being marked with, stones, the vertical stones of some sort. They had the barrows, and often they were those that passed, if they were considered very, very powerful or very, very strong. Often after death, they were dismembered, and the bones taken to different tribes. So, like, if you had a very, very powerful leader, yes, part of that leader may have been buried in the local barrow or funeral site for his family or her family. But they would then take bits and pieces of that leader to the different tribes or the different clans to, spread that power and that blessing around to the entire community. And it was often, it wasn't done as a way of disrespect, but more a way of honoring a way of honoring the dead, and spreading, that energy about. So so I'll keep reading here. I did actually read through this before I got to it. So in Mexico today, for instance, we've got the Day of the Dead, and that's in November, and families get together, they honor the dead. So I'm going to go back to contemporary times. We'll go back to the history in a minute, because I want to talk more about the Norse mythology. The Parentalia, which was in ancient Rome, is a celebration of honoring the spirits of the ancestors. It was generally in February. And similar to Day of the Dead, it involved a visit to cemeteries, and you would leave offerings or gifts for the ancestors. Now, you can have an ancestor shrine yourself, because often, in a way, if you have photographs in your household of people who have passed, in a way that is kind of, a little bit of a shrine to those who have passed in reality, because you're trying to remember them. You're holding their memory to you. You're reminded of them and their existence and what they've done. And it helps if you put it someplace, where they're not going to be disturbed. I know my grandparents, who were not pagan, they're very Christian. They had a second family room that was where the kids went to go play and just run amok, because it was downstairs and away from everybody else, and we could be loud and watch movies and stuff, and not bother everyone else. And one wall in this room, and it was a fairly large room, was just covered with pictures, pictures of those who have passed, and it was some some of the photographs were from um, before my ancestors actually came over from Germany. I am very Germanic and Irish actually in my descent, and it's real, and and so I feel really connected. Actually, I'm not surprised by that because I do feel connected to those traditions. But even though my grandmother wasn't setting up a shrine to those who had passed, in a way she had, because this wall was 100% a wall of remembering. It wasn't really very contemporary. I mean, there were some photographs from like her childhood of herself and her sibling, and some wedding photographs for when she got married, and some pictures of my aunts and uncles. So yes, those were there, but generally speaking, this wall was just covered with people who were dead. And it was really fun to sit and look at all those different pictures and see how they dressed. And my grandmother, being the historian that she was, had little blurbs with each photograph, so we could read about the different people and just kind of get to know them. And then later she wrote a book, kind of putting all of her memories into this book about those who had passed. And actually, it's kind of a family treasure for me because she's really talking about, things that I would never have learned if she hadn't written it down. Because she was more content talking about today when we actually spoke. In a way, I really think that having those pictures of our elders like that on the wall when we're down there playing, and they were pretty unsupervised, generally speaking. It felt very protective. Anytime we stayed over and had a big sleepover, we slept in that room, and I've always felt pretty doggone protected by them. Even now, after my grandmother passed, I did get to keep some of those photos myself, and I have them hanging in my house. And I look at them often, and there's pictures of my grandparents, and I look at them often, and I hope that, I'm doing the best I can. And even though their path was very different than mine, I still hope that they approve of it, and I hope they're protective of myself and Minnie Paisley and just my family in general. And so that's part of the reason why people venerate their ancestors. It's because your kin, the people who are blood related to you, are generally speaking, because not always, but generally speaking, going to be more protective of you than anyone else. And it's important, I think, for us to have that connection, and to allow them to protect us and remember them. So often if I'm doing a working or something that I want to focus more on self or more family oriented, I talk to my kin, my elders, my ancestors. And I don't generally name any one specific name. It's more of a, hey y'all, I could use some help here, point me in the right direction. And I have to say, without it, almost without fail, because there's been a few times when I'm sure they said something and I didn't hear the lesson or hear the direction, they have been protective, and they've really been there in a way that I think a lot of deities just don't have the time for. I mean, you stop and think about it. You're praying to a deity and you're petitioning them and you want this thing, whatever this thing is. How many people are asking for things when it comes to deities? A bunch of them. Doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, if you are a pagan or witch or Wicca or any of that. If you're petitioning for a thing, whether even if it's just guidance, they get a lot of those. And it's like the phones are, just ringing off the hook, honestly. And so the potential for them to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, yeah, this is what you should do, and have that call be answered in a timely fashion, you've really got to shout pretty doggone loud and have that weird ringtone that just cuts through the the buzz and gets the attention. And instead of hoping that that works, because it does, trust me, it does work. Um, Often you get better results by honoring your ancestors and asking your ancestors for help because they have a vested interest in your success. Now, if any of you have seen the movie Mulan, which, okay, it's cartoony and it's trite and it's not very true to the real story, but still, I've got a point here. When Mulan, cuts her hair off and just decides to become a cross-dresser and join the army and fight in her father's place, um, her ancestors woke up in the shrine and they were looking for someone to, go in and protect Mulan. And her ancestors were there discussing how are we going to do this. And so, even though it's my own mental image, that's how I feel about our ancestors in general. I feel like they're there watching over us. We just need to remember to honor them and treat them with respect. Because by golly, they did the best they could to give us the best they had. And now I'm speaking in generalities because I know not every family is the same, unfortunately. But generally speaking, your ancestors should be there to look out for you. And often they will have abilities or energy that they can pass on to you. So that's kind of why I wanted to get back to Norse mythology. I'll do that after the break probably because we've only got a couple minutes here. So often when it comes to honoring your ancestors, if you're going to leave an offering, what did they like in real life before they passed? Do you know? If you don't know, then you don't know. And you got to kind of just figure it out and meditate on it. Ask for some guidance. It's like, hey, if you want me to honor you, what should I give you, or what should I put here? And sometimes it's just a matter of remembering the stories that they are included in, honestly. And often when we need that extra guidance, they are there for us. I know that I have some jewelry that was passed down from my grandmothers, both. And I can definitely feel their energy with that jewelry when I put it on. And it's pretty freaking cool. And I often, if I need that extra oomph of self-confidence, if you will, or energy, or just feeling good, that kind of thing, I will, make sure I'm wearing one of those rings or a brooch or a necklace, just because it makes me feel good, I guess. So, and it helps me focus sometimes. And so I know I wear a lot of rings because, well, I like them and they're pretty. But if I need that connection or that confidence or that security, if you will, I make sure I'm wearing more of that jewelry that I have been handed down, just because I feel that stronger connection. So, anyways, so kinfolk and meditation. Yes, lines are open if you wanted to call. Thank you, Blacktree. Hi, Julia. Hope you're having a good night. That's 213-233-3998. Or again, if you want to send me an email, please do so. I love those. It's wildpaisley@gmail.com. That's WILDEPAISLEY@gmail.com.
And hit that like button.
Yeah, hit the like button. I can see a bunch of you in there. And not as many likes as there are.
Yeah, we're less than half.
Yeah, we're doing good. So, anyways, how was the show tonight?
It was pretty average.
Pretty average? Your last caller was good.
Yeah, he called in last week, turned it into a podcast. So, there you go.
Excellente. All right. Hey, any thoughts on Ancestor Worship?
I was like, say the word honoring.
Honoring.
That
must have been your little voice in the back of my head that I was hearing.
Because 2 seconds later you said honoring instead of venerating, which is right. I mean, it's just a more mm, easily processed word.
Processed word.
Yeah, it's easier to go. Oh, honoring. Yes, venerating. It's a little more.
Are you
in-depth,
saying one's a $20 word and one is more commonly known?
No, one is just more commonly known. I wouldn't say $20 word, but we have a pretty smart,
This is
pretty
true.
smart, listenership. So
Yeah, this is true. This is very, very true. So, yes, honoring. Because honor, actually, I think is more appropriate than worship as far as
Yes.
words go.
yes,
But I will get into that after the break. And yeah, make sure you check out the Etsy shop. There's not much there right at the moment because I've been redesigning some stuff. But yeah, because sometimes you just need to redesign stuff,
yeah.
right?
Yes, Black Tree. That was brought up. Pictures hanging on the wall is a way of honoring. Yeah.
Yep. Be right back, you guys.
Brothers of the shining moon,
Heaven, earth, and sea.
I call upon you
In this hour, bring magic unto me.
Brothers, oh, the cauldron cries, it singeth unto me the songs of Mother Goddess and the Father in the tree.
Apparently, I was live.
Yep.
Hot mic, hot mic.
Yeah, hot mic. It's all good.
Um,
Hello, my lovelies.
Somebody,
Paisley Wild, yeah.
Paisley Wild here on the Spaces Between. Welcome to her spiritual journey.
Yeah, as Dawn sings. Yes.
Somebody asked if Don has his own YouTube channel. The answer is yes. It's called The Paranormal Portal and the Spaces Between.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in having my own channel, but you can catch me every Saturday night, both on the Paranormal Portal and the last half of this show on Friday and Saturday, and then Wednesdays on the Portal.
Yep. You're busy.
Yeah, and sometimes on the podcast.
Busy, busy, busy. So, Ancestor Worship.
Yes.
Yes. So I kind of wanted to focus on the Nordic thoughts,
yeah,
because
let's do that.
I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's veneration, honoring, because yes, I really do feel it's honoring more than veneration or worship. And it's thought, specifically, well, by many, many different traditions, that the afterlife is this life also. In other words, once the people pass, their physical is still here, and their energy or their soul or their spirit is the only thing that crosses into the afterlife. At the same time, that afterlife world or realm, it's not like you're going up into the sky to heaven or down into the earth to hell or, to Venus or whatever. It's like a parallel dimension to what we're currently existing, like a parallel plane, if you will. And my personal thought, I feel this is accurate, I guess.
I agree.
I think, yeah, I just do. The Norse have a particular tradition or myth, I guess, legend, that the King Halfdan, who was known for just being a really awesome guy, I guess. He was loved by his people. He was not really worshipped by his people, but they really respected him, and it was just a time of prosperity in his life. And he's one of those that when he passed, his body was separated, and the different districts and clans that he was a part of or ruled over each received a part of his body to keep that energy in the soil. And because in their belief, once someone passes, they become the spirits of the land around them upon which they live.
Right. The energy of that body goes to the land. Yeah.
Exactly. And the actual just mound that he was buried in, his head, basically.
The burrow.
Yeah, this burrow. That was still worshipped. They would actually. So interesting, really random tidbit. A burrow often had a little window or opening so that people could drop an offering in there, even after someone's passed, without opening up the entire burrow.
Thing, yeah.
Yep. So it's just an interesting, random thing. But
burial mound.
Exactly. But King Halfdan, he was the first of the spirits that transitioned to becoming an elf. And so the Nordic tradition is that once someone passed, they became elves when they're in the burial mound,
Mhm.
and then passed from the burial mound into the land. And in a way, this tradition was also taken to Ireland and Scotland and all that, with the Fae living in the mounds and stuff. And there's actually a lot of relationship between the Nordic traditions and the Irish and Scottish traditions, just because there was a lot of commingling of beliefs as people traded and raided.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. It's just to me, I think that's super super interesting that the land spirits became and the elves are actually the ancestors to those who live there currently.
Well, yes and no.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, for King Alfden, uh, yeah, that's where the word elf comes from.
Yeah.
Is his name,
Yeah,
Alfden.
yeah. Well, one of the interpretations of his name is Olaf,
Mhm.
or Olaf the Holy, and so became Olaf the Elf, and
Mhm.
then just the name, as time passes, the words change, and
And yeah,
Mhm.
and they go through the different cultures and the different
Mhm.
languages and such like that. Yeah, what do they call that? It evolves.
Evolves, yes. And so I don't know. It's interesting to me that something that is so widespread and 100% believed. A lot of people believe in elves. They're German. Um, and there's actually some symbology with the elves that we're not going to go into here because it was adopted by extraordinarily racist people,
Yeah.
and that's really unfortunate. So,
Yes.
and just crazy. That same symbology has been repeated throughout many different places and times and religions and such, but because one person turned it into a bad thing, it's bad for everybody.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's interesting that Brian, you're silly. The ancestors then become the spirits or the whites of the land, the elves of the land, and a lot of the standing stones, for instance, especially the Nordic ones with the staves and the runes on them and everything, are they're not just markers of a place, but they're also potential curses. Because they said, hey, if you disturb this rest, this stone, it's it's here as a memorial for X person or Y person, and if you damage it, it'll take away the spirits of the earth, and it'll leave it barren and dry, and you won't be able to raise any farm stuff on it. So I don't know. There's just one of the little factoids about those standing stones. So yeah. Catching up on chat. I'd looked away, and you guys are just chatting away in there. So
Day says old Irish family can normally say what kind of being their family line came from. Says my grandfather told us we came from the She.
yeah, very cool. I have no idea how far back I go, but I just know that one side of my family came over literally on the Mayflower.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm told that my family line also was on the Mayflower.
Interesting.
Yes.
We've known each other for a long time.
Okay.
And then I had other family that came through through Ellis Island before between the two world wars.
And I've also been told part of my family is Hessian. That would explain a few things.
Yeah, I actually would. So
My love of doom metal. Sorry.
you're just weird. You're such a weirdo. I'm just
Yes.
saying. And yeah, and Julia's actually traced hers back to Ragnar.
Ragnar the Witch. Which Ragnar?
I'm
Sorry.
yeah, is a popular name, but no, she's been doing a little bit of genealogy on herself, and it's been interesting. I would love to spend more money and do more genealogy search, but holy cow, that's expensive stuff.
You remember that half my family on my mother's side is LDS, right?
I know, but I am not going to join your strange
You don't have
cult
My strange cult. Never been there.
to tap into.
No, but I mean, they have those lineages, and it can be shared. It's not secret.
Are you sure? Are they
Yeah.
going to baptize me and tell me I'm LDS?
No, you're not going to have to do works for the dead. It's okay.
No. Are they going to baptize me and say I'm LDS after I pass, even though I'm not?
Oh yeah, the after fact.
Yeah.
Baptisms. Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's just very, very odd. So yeah, the ancestor worship. Somebody who is this? Titan just mentioned that Asian cultures relying on ancestry, but didn't realize that so many others did. Yeah. So Asian ancestor veneration is a really big deal. Just because family wasn't just the people you're directly related to. It was the your cousins, your kinfolk, those living and deceased, and it was just I don't know. They maybe Asians, since because their culture has survived for so many millennia, actually at this point.
Right.
They don't really see that those that have passed. They're still there with them, and so I think it's interesting. But there's Native Americans venerate their first people. Sorry. Their ancestors. I had a whole list here. Where did it go?
You and Brent and your tabathons
I know, right?
drive me nuts.
Whoops. Well, I actually had a whole list of links that I wanted to go to so I could talk about things without opening all the tabs so I could close them out.
So you open a new window, open the first tab you want to talk about, then you open the next tab, and then you just start from the left and go right. It's pretty simple.
Sure, okay.
It's organization.
Well, I'm not very, very organized, apparently. Anyways.
Moving along.
Oh, yes, where was this? I had it. So, Asia, yes. Even Confucianism was had a strong influence with the ancestor worship. It's been a big deal. So the shrines are actually kept in the homes in China. Japan was very similar with their reverence for their ancestors, but it's more of a Shinto style. There's shrines and altars not necessarily in the home, but in the compound.
Yeah, they had their own building or something separate from the house.
I gotta tell you, I kind of like the idea of having a home compound, so that when Minnie Paisley becomes like 15, I can banish her to the far wing. Just saying. She's 5 now. Ooh, that girl's sassy. Anyways, Hindus. So yeah, I wish list. I want to win the lottery so I can build a compound. You guys can come visit. It'll be fun. So in India, ancestor veneration was practiced. However, it wasn't very wide scale. It was more, they would lead the spirits between the time between death and then rebirth, because they were very, very much for or very much believe in reincarnation.
Right.
So
that's where the river Ganges comes into play.
So the male ancestors supposedly actually helped with the growth of crops, and so those ancestors would receive, food, I guess, they'd leave offerings of food. So MCAT says Hong Kong, he just pulled up. He wants to join the compound.
Give him the old trucker salute.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the Mediterranean, so in Greece actually, ancestor veneration did take place, but it wasn't as important in Asia, of course. But it was more, the supreme heads of house, the political leaders that were honored and venerated. But then a lot of the Romans, emperors thought they were gods. So, it just, Yeah. It's just so yeah. It's part of the religion somewhat, but not as developed, of course, as in Asia. Partly just because there was some reincarnation thought there as well, but they did believe that the ancestors should be worshipped instead of just respecting them. And they often put people on display after they died, just so that people could respect them. That's probably where some of our funeral rites today come from.
Yeah,
The
the
viewing
wake.
of the body and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah, no, the viewing.
yeah, the viewing. In Africa, of course, Egyptians were very, very much into death and venerating those who had passed. I mean, they built huge monuments to those that died, or they spent all their life building monuments to their own death. So, mummifying the body and, oh, hi Lola. And yeah, just really, I don't know, it's just interesting. That, the Egyptians were very, very into taking care of the dead. They had a festival called the Wag Festival, which celebrated life after death, and it just gave Egyptians hope for a good afterlife. And they felt that the lack of ancestor veneration was one of the worst possible things that you could ever do.
I kind of agree.
And it would actually cause the soul of the ancestors to die a second death, which is why if you watch the History Channel, ever read any history, there's a lot of the hieroglyphs and such talking about this pharaoh or that pharaoh were significantly damaged. It was thought to erase the memory of
Right.
them
Yep.
and prevent people from remembering them after death.
Yep.
Um,
That's why the Sphinx supposedly doesn't have a nose. Apparently, it's claimed that the face on the Sphinx was Khufu, I believe it was, and after Khufu died, they tried to erase him, so they disfigured the Sphinx. But I don't necessarily believe that as
I
well.
thought it was just supposed to be Michael Jackson. Sorry.
Oh Jesus, that's Nefertiti.
So other parts of Africa, a lot of the other tribes, practice ancestor veneration just because the ancestors were seen as keepers and guiders of life. I mean, seriously, yes, there were gods and deities, but they still believed that their ancestors were the ones who cared for them directly. And so people would build shrines or altars to honor their ancestors. They would do it through dance. And they felt that you could only become an ancestor if you lived a good life, because your ancestors are there to be your spiritual guides after death. And dying was not necessarily a good enough way to become a spirit guide after death. Because if you're, I don't know, it's just, they're stricter, I guess. Death isn't good enough. You got to die fantastically to be, a spirit guide. And if you felt the spirits were unhappy with you, then you need to give some sort of offering to that spirit. So, I don't know. And some of those altars are just really elaborate and beautiful. And there's a lot of just, super interesting. In the Andes, so ancestor veneration and honoring was practiced by all social classes, and they actually worshipped their ancestors more than they did royalty. And they believed that if you did good deeds while you were alive, you would join the sun after death. And if you didn't show reverence to your ancestors, then, you'd get sick or other bad things would happen to you.
Hey Lola, what do you mean you're going to die fabulously?
She's going to do it with a glass of wine in her hand and a smile on her lips and just be sassy. And, I got to tell you, Lola, you are
Sassy.
You are a sassy girl. So, yes, no, I think it's good. So, and I think it's awesome. She's a sure.
So, who else?
So in the Andes, yeah, there's a lot of the winter solstice festivals were dedicated to the ancestors, and and they would include and assumed that the ancestors would be at family meetings and celebrations and such. Um, and they would worship huacas, which is a sacred object or place, and it just was a place that a family's ancestors would reveal themselves through worship. So if you really wanted to connect with your ancestors, you'd go to a waka and you'd leave an offering and you meditate, and they would come say hello and give you guidance. So, there's some thoughts to, like, on Easter Island, the is it Moai?
Why?
They're representative of those who had passed. So it'd be they are representative of those who have passed because those folks aren't with us anymore. But they're supposedly, to honor, chieftains or those who were important in life, to protect them in the afterlife. So, or from the afterlife, I should say. So yeah, I don't know. I firmly believe in ancestor honoring, and I think it's an important part of the pagan path. At least my path.
I think you're right, because you mentioned earlier in the show about how, the gods, the goddesses, the demis, they all have so many people that entreat them, that sometimes you don't need them. You just need the guidance from the elders. Yes. And, like you said, it's like, you're going to ring the bell because, for a deity, because you are having, a bad time. You're having a rough time in your life. It would make more sense to me if you would entreat with your ancestors, because they've probably already been there.
Right. So Lola asks if if I think we borrow from these rites.
Yes.
Yes, I do, actually, and I don't see it as appropriation. Actually, I see it as borrowing or interpretation.
Oh goodness! Yes.
I know that appropriation is a bad word for you.
Yes.
And I don't know about Wiccans because I wouldn't make a very good Wiccan. But I as a pagan, yes. I do feel that we do borrow a bit from these different rites, just in part. I suppose it's not so much borrowing as similar.
Right.
I mean,
we have our own ways to do it, but they are similar to ways other people do it, I think.
Yeah.
Lola, are you lumping pagans and heathens together? Just a quick question.
So, just like language sprung up all over the world at the same time, but it's all different. But we all speak and we all have language and written language eventually. So yeah, and yeah, with death, we're not gonna get out of this alive, guys.
Nope.
Death happens to all of us. It blows me away how much some people fight it. I mean, seriously, embrace the horror. You're getting older and you will die at some point. Is better than some of the nightmare plastic surgeries I've seen. But I think honoring the dead is a real thing, regardless of who you are and where you come from. And I think they're there to help us. Yeah, heathens are kind of pagans. Sorry.
Well, no, I agree, but I mean, there's different viewpoints on that as well. So.
Oh. Okay. I think Lola needs to call in and be a guest again. Lola, I'll message you. We should get together, talk about Friday. Maybe not this Friday, but yeah, coming up. I'll message you. So yeah, I think ancestor worship is a real thing as far as the pagan path, Wiccan path, witches, yes. But I see it more as honoring than worshiping.
Yes.
I'm not very good at religion, and I see worshiping as religion, I suppose. So I guess I feel that it's honoring. I would rather honor my ancestors and honoring the gods. I see it as honoring the gods, the deities, and more than worshiping them. Because I'd rather have a relationship with them than
hierarchy.
Yeah,
Less of a parent-child, and more of a peer.
no, less of a supplicant.
Okay.
I'm not very good at being a supplicant, I guess. A relationship is something I'd rather have. A communication, dialogue, that kind of thing. So my personal opinion is it's honoring, but it's not just honoring the ancestors and the elders. It's also honoring the deities. So I think they are two 100% parts to the whole of the path. So there. That's my interpretation. It's my path I'm talking about here.
It's her 3 cents.
No, that's a different video. I try to keep those 15 minutes or less. So yeah, check out the YouTube channel if you want to see the 3 cent videos. I get on my soapbox and I go off. But yeah, it's a good time. Yes, share the show. Check it out.
Thumbs up, comments,
Yep.
increases visibility.
Patreon is patreon.com/the_spaces-between. And we will see you next week. I hope you all have a great week. And merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again.
Good night, all.
Bye, all.
Lord, within the sun, as we will, so mote it be, the spell forever done. Sisters of the shining moon, heaven, earth, and sea, I call upon you in this hour, bring magic unto me. Brothers, oh, the cauldron cries, it singeth unto me the songs of Mother Goddess and the Father in the tree. Aye-oh, down the path we go.